This is a great example to show you guys that you can actually remove this stuff without the lift and all that stuff. I mean, I'm just lying on my back in the junkyard, man, it's pretty terrible, but you can do it. The edges of the piston are broken off. We did, looks like, have a ringland issue on this cylinder. However, the good news, it did not scratch up our cylinder wall, so we should be able to do a quick hone on that and have no problem at all. So in this case, you can see that took a grand total of about 2 minutes to clean that all off, and now this head's ready to go back on. Hey guys, welcome back to Reignited and welcome back to our Cheap Hemi Challenge. We are busy working on the engine for our 2003 Ram 1500 that we've got going on here. I am still stuck deep in trying to clean all of the engine parts. There's so much oil caked onto those parts. It's been a real battle, so I decided to take a little break from that, come back to the engine block itself and let you guys know something. Now, originally I was going to replace these lifters with a new set of lifters. It only makes sense if you have this thing taken all the way down like this to replace these lifters while you're here. However, if you're at all involved in the automotive field, you know how difficult it is to get parts right now, and these lifters are on national back order, so it's at least a 6-week wait. Clearly that is not going to work for me. And just to show you just how much I think of the factory lifters, I would rather put these lifters, the factory lifters, back in the engine with 195,000 miles on them. I would rather go with these than a cheap set of lifters off Amazon. The aftermarket lifters just have so many problems with rattling and not actually getting the air out of the hydraulic portion of them. It just doesn't make sense. All of these lifters are still in really good shape. The roller bearings are in really nice shape. I'm just gonna put them back in the engine. So that's unfortunately what's gonna happen here. Now, moving on to the actual block itself, what we need to do here is we need to do a quick hone job. All we're doing here is we're not trying to take every single mark out of the cylinder walls. There's some light scratches in these cylinder walls. We're not trying to take every mark out. All we're trying to do is scuff up those cylinder walls, get rid of the glaze on there. That way the new piston rings have something to bite and really bed into. So I'm gonna show you real quick the process for that. And again, just a quick hone job. That's all we're doing here. We're not boring things. We're not performing a machinist procedure here. Nothing like that. In fact, it's something that can be performed with one of these. This is your common electric drill, and this is a 3-stone hone available at any common parts store. You can also get the ball hone type. Those will give you almost more of a crosshatch type pattern when you run those here. But I prefer the 3-stone hone because it feels like it's just a touch more aggressive than some of the ball hones are, and we'll get some of the light scratches out easier. All right, so we're gonna jump into this. What we gotta do here is make sure that you keep these cylinder walls well lubricated with pretty much any form of oil you can think of will work just fine. You go ahead and wet the cylinder down, run this through, and what you want to do is you want to continually be moving up and down the cylinder. You never wanna stay in one place for any length of time. Keep moving up and down, and that will also give you that crosshatch type pattern that we're really looking for. All right, let's go ahead and I'll show you the before on these cylinders, and then we'll go ahead and clean them up, and I'll show you the after. After you finish making a pass, go ahead and clean up the cylinder with some brake cleaner. Get rid of all the debris. And you'll be able to see at that point if there's an area you need to hit again, if you need to touch it up a little bit more. In this case, I will run through another pass. As most of you know, if you have a bunch of scratches that are super deep that you can really catch with your fingernail and stuff like that, then just a simple hone job isn't going to be enough. right, there we go. As I mentioned, it's not going to be absolutely perfect. There are still going to be some marks in the cylinder there, but you can kind of see how it gives it a nice even pattern finish, even a bit of a crosshatch pattern there. And that allows you to have a nice, good surface for those rings to bite into. So that is all just fine. And then I've got this side done already. Same thing. Those various discolorations you're seeing there, that's where some of the brake cleaner has dried on there. That'll go away once I put some oil on there. So that's another thing I want to mention too. After you do this, these cylinders are bare steel. So if you live in a climate where it rusts very easily, you'll want to put oil on it almost immediately. So currently we're waiting on some parts for our engine refresh that we're doing over there. So I figured I'd jump on over to the truck itself and do some of the other minor things that I'd noticed while it was in here. And one of those things is the headlights here. You can see that they're very yellowed, they're very fogged over like most of these plastic headlights get after a certain time. And the standard process on these used to be to go ahead and tape them off or remove them and sand them down and get them all clear again and then polish them back to a nice clear shine. Unfortunately, when you do that, you end up having to put a clear coat over the top of it. Otherwise, it'll just very quickly go back to a yellowed or fogged look. So I was kind of looking around to see for what kind of different options are out there. And I found this kit online. It's from a company called Cerakote. And this is not sponsored in any way. I paid for this with my money. They don't know I'm doing this. I just wanted to give it a try and see what it does, because they claim they have a very simple 3-step process where you can in fact almost just wipe off this yellowed look here and then do a quick sand, like a really easy sand with a little hand dolly type sander that they've got. And then they have a clear coat protection that you can just wipe on that they say covers it for the life of the vehicle. So I'm pretty skeptical because I know what it normally takes to clean these things up. So I'm kind of excited to see what this thing will do. If it works well, that's awesome because I'll definitely be buying more of it. I mean, for my wife's car for one, because her headlights are getting pretty yellowed as well. So let's get into it. Let's give this thing a shot. So each kit does come with enough components to do both sides, so that's really nice. Everything is labeled really well as far as which step it is. First off, we're going to do step 1, this oxidization remover. So let's just wipe at the headlights with these things, and they'll slowly turn like that nice gummy yellow color because it's taking this oxidization off. It says go ahead, as soon as one of them is completely saturated with that yellow stuff, you get rid of it, move on to the next one, and keep doing it until you've used all 4 of them. And they said even if the last one still has some yellow on it, don't worry too much, just move on from there. So let's get into this first step. That is interesting. I'm not sure what sort of voodoo is at work here, but that does seem to take a lot of the yellowing out of it just right away. I don't know if it's just because it's getting it like wet with some form of liquid, but I also don't understand chemical stuff, so. Doesn't even look like I'm going to need this 4th one because it seems to be pretty clear overall, but I'm going to go ahead and use it anyway, just to make sure I get any last little vestiges off of there that I can. And I suspect we'll still see some discoloration on this pad too. After you finish wiping all that on there with all the pads, you want to go ahead and clean and dry the whole surface here thoroughly. So in this case, I've got just a little water bottle. All right, so you'll notice after you dry it that they get cloudy again. That is okay. Because now we're moving on to step number 2. Now step 2 is this little foam, little sanding pad here, and you're gonna start with the red disc on there, and the red disc says it was the 2000 grit. So you go ahead and just sand the whole surface of the headlight, and then you transition from the red pad to the gray pad on there to finish it off. Now it says to sand this for about 2 to 3 minutes. I might spend a little bit more time on here to try to get it a little bit smoother, a little bit more flat on there. And one thing you want to do is you want to keep this wet the whole time while you're sanding on. These high grit pads, they need that wetness to help glide and not get too gummed up in there. So we'll go ahead and spray this down with some water, go ahead and get into sanding. Another interesting note on here was that it said don't sand in a circular pattern. I thought that was really strange. Normally they always say sand in a circular pattern. These ones they say don't do that. You can feel as you're sanding the really rough areas, and you can also feel when it smooths itself out, so you kind of know when to move on. Plus the sound will change a little bit. It'll stop sounding so scratchy. And patience is indeed a virtue at this stage. If you want to do as good of a job as you can. All right, that feels pretty decent. That feels pretty decent right there. I think I'm gonna move on to the gray disc now. We'll try to smooth this thing out even more. It's not bad. You're not going to be able to get everything off of the headlights now with this fine a grit, but I think that did a pretty nice job. So let's switch over to the gray pad now. So this portion of it is all about your own patience. How much time are you willing to spend to actually sand these things? I spent probably about 10 minutes so far between the first stage and now the second stage. Honestly, I could go a little bit further with it, but with this sort of grit, you're not gonna take off the super deep stuff unless you start with something a little bit more aggressive. I think the basic idea behind this kit is just to get it as clear as you can with the existing of what's there without actually cutting into the headlight material itself. So this is just taking off the fine edge, but removing the oxidization, sanding it like that should help a lot. And then once we clean it and dry it, you'll see that it'll be really cloudy, but that's okay because once you actually apply the coating at the end, it turns it back that clear again. It's essentially like putting a clear coat protection over it. So it should end up nice and clear. We'll see once I get that third coat on there just how clear it is. I'm not expecting a factory finish here. We're looking, I mean, this kit, I'll go ahead and put the price up on the screen, what it was through Amazon. I'll go ahead and have a link down below for it. But for that kind of a price, I think this is about what you're gonna get. Again, not a factory finish, but much improved from what it was originally. Okay, let's go ahead and get this headlight assembly all cleaned off and get ready to apply the coating. That 3000 grit does a pretty good job. I was actually expecting it to be even a little bit more hazy than this. So for the final step here, we have our ceramic coating here. You go ahead and pop this open. It says to wipe it horizontally, top to bottom. So you start up here and then use a 50% overlapping technique as you go. And when you do that, you're only going to apply one coat. So you go ahead and just do one full sweep, and then you have to let it dry for at least 60 minutes after that. So I think we'll give this a whirl. So that's pretty much it for this side. I'll go ahead and give you a comparison before and after here. Looks like I probably could have done a little bit better job with my sanding here on the very edge. And there's a couple of other areas here where you'll still see some of that oxidization / corrosion that's developed here. But overall, I think the headlight assembly looks a lot better than it used to. And of course, you should be able to actually use your headlights now, which is a nice bonus. And if this protection will keep this yellowing from happening again, I think that's worth the price, just that alone, because every time I actually sand these things down and get them really nice, within a couple of months they just go back yellow again, unless you actually put some sort of protective coat on there. So again, if this actually will protect this thing for, it says the life of the vehicle after this, totally worth it just for that. Here's your before shot. It's actually, oddly enough, the camera actually makes it look a little bit better than it is. It's actually very, very yellowed and quite foggy on there. And then here is the after. So quite a dramatic difference. Now you can still kind of see on there, see if I can get the angle right. Well, it actually looks pretty decent on camera, but there are some areas of oxidation there that would take some heavier sandpaper to really take off. But overall, I mean, you gotta admit, it looks about 10,000 times better. And for only about 15 minutes worth of work for one side, you can easily do both sides in half an hour, unless of course you want to get really aggressive with sanding and try to get as much of that as you can. But I think that's pretty darn good. Got the passenger side done. There is no denying that these things look completely different now with that procedure being done. That being said, I still would like, I think the only improvement maybe I would make, man, it just doesn't bring it up on camera, but there is still some fogginess in some of the areas where it's more heavily oxidized in there. I kind of wish that the kit would come with like 1,000 grit or maybe 1,500 grit, just something a bit more aggressive to take some of that fogginess out. But then again, it could just be because I wasn't sanding it long enough. But look at that overall. I mean, especially on camera, it makes them look brand spanking new. Don't expect them to be that factory finish like I talked about, but man, that is a gigantic improvement. And for that cost, guys, I gotta say, I recommend it. Really appreciate you guys always showing so much support. You know the deal, guys. Hit that subscription button, hit that notification bell so you see those new videos as soon as they come out. And we'll see you next time on Reignited.